Hey there, it's Sam, and I'm making this video for the full moon in Taurus that's going to happen on Wednesday, November 25th. So, as you can hear, my voice is a little hoarse. I just got over a little bout of laryngitis, but I can get through this. So, this moon is going to be full in Taurus, and it's opposite the sun, which is in Scorpio. We've had the sun and Mercury in Scorpio for about 10 days, and it's been a shift away from the accommodation of Libra, where we try to get along with each other and we try to hear the other person's perspective and things like that, to Scorpio, which is about sort of explosive inner turmoil and strengthening our fears and insecurities. since since we had this transit of the Sun and Mercury into Scorpio, there's been a lot of security threats and terrorist threats. When the Sun was debilitated in Libra, we had that terrorist act in Paris, and then right before that we also had an explosion in Lebanon. This was when Mars and Rahu were very close together in Virgo. But since then, now there's been a lot of increased rhetoric about safety and security in the aftermath of such events. Now, this insecurity and fear is related to Scorpio, where we realize that the world is unsafe, where we realize that we can't control, big Scorpio theme, where we can't control others and where we can't control situations. Ultimately, what we're trying to control in Scorpio is ourself on an individual level. But because we realize we don't have any self-control, or because we realize others have control over us, especially once we care about them, we try to control them. So this is the problem with Scorpio. This is the feeling of Scorpio, is this worry and this fear, often an imagined fear, that comes from insecurity and from not being able to manage life, because ultimately we know that we are going to die. Ultimately we know that we are vulnerable and that we can't control every outcome, or in fact hardly any outcome. We can control what we can, but simply by virtue of the fact that we're involved with other people and they're going to do what they're going to do, and we have no control over that, and we're living in a world, where there's a government which, all these kind of shadow power issues and power plays are happening. We're becoming more and more aware of those things. So this is the cycle where the Sun is right now, and opposite that is Taurus. Taurus is the opposite of Scorpio, where we stabilize, where we feel stable and solid in an unstable, sort of emotionally hostile world. And again, the world isn't necessarily emotionally hostile. That's not the end point of Scorpio. That's just the origin point. Underneath it all, Scorpio is where we strengthen our emotions and our insecurities, and we find self-mastery, self-control. So this is a big lesson right now on this full moon in Taurus. Again, the full moons are always where we harmonize the energy of wherever the Sun is. So the Sun in Scorpio is being polarized and harmonized now by this moon in Taurus, which is about emotional peace and emotional strength and a solid emotional core that is not wavering and changing and restless. So one of the things about Scorpio is we don't actually get control of ourselves until the heart calms down. And that heart calming down and that heart feeling peaceful and settled is shown by the exaltation point of the moon in Taurus. Every sign must be harmonized with its opposite, and that's what we get in the full moon. One of the problems with the Scorpio energy is mistaking this intensity and drama for growth. Transformation only happens once the intensity of Scorpio is harmonized with the stability of Taurus. So the intensity of Scorpio harmonized with the stability of Taurus is very possible now. And this full moon shows that promise, gives that promise. But in the midst of that, you may have noticed for the last week or so, you've been maybe even a little paranoid and acting out and, having kind of some emotional tantrums or seeing others do it too. And you've been challenged and compelled to not do the same thing yourself. Maybe you have done some of it. Maybe you've gotten triggered and let your mind get carried away. Again, there's a lot of potential and a lot of potential growth and change and transformation with Scorpio if we can manage that emotional willfulness and that desire to win and all of those things that the heart doesn't really understand. So now is a very good time to connect with your spiritual practices, meditation, mantra, being surrounded by those where you feel nurtured and cared for will be very important, and caring for others as well. See, one of the great things about Scorpio is that it's a sign where when we can be aligned with something bigger than our own emotional needs and our own emotional restlessness, greatness emerges. So, for instance, people who have Scorpio sign are great friends. They're wonderful friends to others. They can be difficult lovers and romantic partners where there's all that desire on the line but in situations where there's more detachment, like for friends, and even for, it's also what makes Scorpio such great counselors, because there's more dispassion there. There's not as much personal involvement, not as much personal emotional involvement. This is a very deep lesson. So that emotional courage, which is where we have the Sun and Mercury in Scorpio, will be harmonized with the stability and the structure of the full moon in Taurus. Now the moon is exalted in Taurus. I know you're waiting for me to get to that. It's very auspicious. There are two things that make the moon powerful. One is its brightness, and one of the other most important features is its sign or the dignity. Those are two important things, especially for the moon. So this moon is both really bright and it's in its powerful sign of exaltation. It's like perhaps the most powerful moon of the year. So again, there's a lot of capacity for stability, and the reason the moon is exalted in Taurus is because it's opposite that restlessness of Scorpio. That's why the moon is debilitated in Scorpio, exalted in Taurus. So one of the great lessons of Taurus is not just materiality and happiness with other people and that sort of herd mentality, but the deeper promise of Taurus is what's called santosha, or contentment. Very hard to come by. And again, Scorpio is where we tend to have a lot of discontent, especially with others, and especially those others where we're emotionally involved. Opposite that, Taurus is where we can have a lot of contentment and really build from a place of fullness and contentment. One of the things that's always stressed about Taurus is money and materiality. That's definitely a part of Moon in Taurus, is we can really receive things better and then enjoy them more. And when we can enjoy, the heart feels good. When we're surrounded by people that we enjoy and we can actually receive it and enjoy it, that's a great thing. But the deeper lesson is to be content with what we have. That's the nature of Lakshmi. And Lakshmi is related to Venus, the ruler of Taurus. Lakshmi isn't just the one who has all the money. Lakshmi is the one who is content regardless of how much money she has. This is the higher quality of Venus. It's not about wealth and luxury. It's about happiness with what we have. Ultimately, happiness for no reason. Because when we need, some sort of money in order to be happy, or some sort of reflection from another person or some sort of situation to be happy, then we have no happiness at all. So one of the greatest things about Taurus is that we're able to enjoy things very easily with Taurus, and that gives us contentment so we can relax. This is actually why the moon is exalted in Taurus, and why opposite in Scorpio, it's where we're not content, because we sense that everything is fragile. We sense that everything is intense. Taurus is where we sense that everything is fine and everything is settled. So feel that peace and contentment and that sense of being settled, in opposition to all of the drama of this world. I mean, and especially right now, we have this, here in the world recently, we just had, there's so much going on in the international affairs, just like in U.S. politics. We got, Donald Trump still running his mouth now about, surveying mosques and making Muslims enter databases, and we just had a Russian plane shut down over Turkey, which is very scary stuff in the world. We're feeling more and more insecure all the time. This transit of Mars over Rahu, the North Node, earlier in the month was difficult. As I said in my November forecast, the early part of November was really front-loaded for a lot of drama, and it definitely happened that way. So we're feeling more insecure than ever now, especially with the outer world. But again, the greatness of having the sun in Scorpio and the moon in Taurus is the sun in Scorpio is also where we have the strength and the purpose and the dedication of purpose to really go into those dark corners of our psyche and illuminate them. That's what the sun does. The sun shines light in whatever area of life where he's involved. And Scorpio is where there's a lot of darkness. So now opposite that, the moon is reflecting back on that sun in Scorpio from Taurus, which is saying, it's okay. It's okay. Life is insecure anyway. You were just under the illusion for a while that it wasn't. You were under the illusion that things were never going to change and that you were going to be comfortable and happy. That's not the case anyway. So just relax into the soul, relax into the self. That's what the moon is. It's the Jiva Atman, the individual soul. Now this moon is in Krittika Nakshatra. It's exalted in Krittika, which literally is the Nakshatra of the cutter. It's to cut. The moon is exalted here because it's where we cut through the illusion of attachment, the illusion of the individual self. This is the highest, this is the highest function, and the highest thing that can come to the moon is to feel pure innocent consciousness without the attachment to the individuality of the past and the memories and the identity, the separate identity. The separate identity really comes in when Purusha is separated into Prakriti, when the Paramatman, the supreme self of the sun, gets separated into the individuality, the separate self of the Jiva. So the moon represents that Jiva and that sense of separateness. It's the part of you that somehow looks back into your past and maintains this continuity with the 10-year-old who grew up in Michigan or Minnesota or Maryland or New Jersey. They're totally different people, but it was the same. It's the moon that makes that bridge. And it's the moon that goes into past lives as well. That's what the Jiva is. That's what the moon is. The part of you that goes through the astral body from lifetime to lifetime. So that's where your karmas reside. That's why the karmas reside in the moon. And this full moon in Krittika is where you can illuminate and cut the cord, cut the attachment, so that rather than being so driven by emotion, you're driven by pure feeling, pure love. And then the stability of Taurus takes you deeper into the self. And the intensity of Scorpio also gives a lot of fuel to that inner quest. Very important. So, this full moon is also aspected by Saturn and Mercury in Taurus. In particular, Saturn is very important right now because it's very close, because when Saturn and the Sun are joined, it tends to bring down our Agni, or our fire. That can, if you've noticed that you've been a little more tired lately, or even that you might have some gas or maybe a little constipation or just not as much vitality, maybe sleeping a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit exaggerated, even more so for the next few days. But here, Sun and Saturn are very close. So Saturn is directly opposite this new moon. I'm sorry, this full moon as well. But it also forms a powerful Raj Yoga from that moon. So it gives a lot of capacity for solitude and introspection. And Mercury gives a lot of capacity when combined with Saturn to also give a lot of discrimination. Both Mercury and Saturn are neutral planets. They're neuter, which means they're not about desire or individuality. They're neuter. I mean, they're very neutral. They're not emotional. Neither Mercury or Saturn are emotional. So it gives this rational detachment. That's the best word. So their aspect gives quite a bit of detachment into the mix. We still have Venus, is still debilitated, which is the ruler of this Taurus moon. So it's separating. It's definitely further away from that Mars and Rahu than it was before. So it's been a rough month, a rough few weeks for, relationship and all that, with Venus joined Mars and Rahu in Virgo. Venus debilitated with Mars and Rahu in Virgo. So experiences with others, in particular relationship partners or even relating, has felt a little tricky. If you've felt a little isolated or wanting to kind of hide out, that's part of the reason. So I would say, though, as it relates to higher spiritual practices and higher spiritual potential, this debilitated Venus isn't the worst, placement. It can definitely, one of the things when Venus is debilitated is we have less charge around sensuality and things like that. So it can also kind of push down the materialistic, desire quality of the moon in Taurus. Because one of the things about the moon in Taurus is it also brings quite a bit of desires. People have a tendency to overstate a planet in good dignity. They, tend to go a little crazy. Oh, moon is exalted, and just go on and on and on about it, exaggerating it too much when it's good and too much when it's bad. Oh, it's debilitated, it's horrible. Oh, it's exalted, it's amazing. It's not amazing. It's a high placement, but anything that's strong also we can tend to misuse. Because we're easily contented and we enjoy things when the moon is in Taurus, it can definitely make us materialistic, can make us attached. It can make us just go, well, I'm happy and everything is fine and it's all good. And we can be stuck. Taurus is where we can get stuck in this separate identity. And most people I know who have Taurus or who have exalted moon, they're quite fixed in that identity. And because it feels good. They're like, you know what? My fixed identity feels good. And my circle of friends and all the enjoyment I get and all this stuff, I like it. So it's nice to like it. Again, this is a transit. It's not a natal chart, but one of the things, with the exalted moon can make us just kind of want to go out, and it can be a little bit shallow. So, but I would say the caveat in these days, with the intensity of these times, it's not so bad to have things be a little bit of shallow fun, and connection with your friends and family isn't the worst thing right now. So anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I'll do the the forecast now for my members. And if you want to see how this is going to affect your sign, you can do that as well for only 1 penny. you can see how this full moon is going to affect you, and also get a daily forecast and other things at my member site. There should be a link here for you to check that out as well.